happening?
Are we live?
That leads me straight into what's been happening with Afghanistan over this last week, right? Where we've seen an increasing presence in the Taliban within the major states in Afghanistan, almost not even almost taking control of that country within a matter of weeks. So with respect to that, it forces me to really ask the question of what, especially from an American perspective, right? Because we know that Americans have always, and the world had always been very critical of the reasons why the U.S. had even moved into Afghanistan in the first place, right? Under the pretense of, let me not say under the pretense, spurred by the advance of the Taliban, led by Osama bin Laden, and then further perpetuated by when 9/11 attacks happened, thus spurring a 20-year war, essentially. And we saw Obama come through with the promise of being able to get the troops out of Afghanistan, with a high cost ratio of what they say, it's every 5,000 bullets kills one insurgent. So there's a high cost element that comes into the situation that's happening there. It's like, what is the good? What is the, is there, is this a good exit almost?
I think we've put ourselves in such an exposed and, whether necessarily or necessarily, like such an entangled position that there is no way to cleanly exit, right? So there's going to be loss of life whether you keep troops there or whether you bring them home. It's just whose lives are going to be lost, right? And I don't feel good about the situation which way whatsoever. You know what I mean? Like, it's my personal take is, I don't necessarily think we needed to be there. And I don't necessarily think the entire time we were there, we were focused on the objective of creating a stable government for us to leave, and a stable situation for the people that aren't involved in this conflict, right? The civilians. I think a lot of our effort, a lot of our time and resources went into actually extracting resources from these areas, right? And I think that's part of why we got into this mess. And when we came in with that as part of our intentions, there was no way that we were gonna leave the situation better, because I don't think that's what we were there to do. And so now that we're seeing it unfold, go ahead.
Please.
I was gonna say, now that we're seeing it unfold, we're seeing, we don't have any good options because we didn't come in with good intentions. Or the right intention. I think that's a pure intention.
That's a big point. Yeah, that's a big point, right? Is the intentions that people came in with. Now, on what's becoming evident, right, is that the presence of U.S. military clearly is something that was holding together, was holding back the rise in insurgents with the Taliban, right? So it's almost as the intention might not have been right going into the circumstance, because definitely there is a high level of resource control that was happening in that area. Afghanistan is very rich in natural resources, in lithium, in natural gases. They have high amounts of that. So let's not be ignorant to the capital incentives that have led the U.S. to be in that place. But then in that same breath, their withdrawal within 2 weeks, we're now seeing what is essentially now about to be a huge humanitarian crisis, with almost 500,000 people trying to leave Afghanistan in droves. I don't know if you saw the images, and we have one of these up, of the airport, but it was a crazy sight, man, seeing all those people in those airports, seeing people hanging onto planes and hanging onto planes on the outsides and falling off of those planes. It was extremely, extremely awful. And immediately, one of the things that people were fighting against is the treatment of women and women rights under Taliban control, where young girls can be forced to marry Taliban leaders, and women's rights are essentially nullified. So it's kind of a catch-22, this one, because on one end, we've been screaming, U.S. must leave. The U.S. has to leave Afghanistan because of the reasons why they're under there, the military industrial complex that perpetuates all of this. But then at the same time, it's like once they do leave, this is what happens, man. You see 500,000 people trying to leave. That's wild.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a case study for what capitalism does all over the world. Is it promises that we can do both, right? It promises that if you're smart enough to know that we're over there for more than democracy, like we're going to get that job done and we're going to do the democracy half. But when it comes where the rubber meets the road and you're dealing with reality, oftentimes we've accomplished a lot more of that resource control than we have in terms of creating the stability. Our presence may have prevented the Taliban from taking over a lot of these cities that we're now seeing it taking, including Kabul. But I don't think we were devoting enough resources and energy into creating a sustainable situation. If over 20 years you've continued to rely on the troops, the American troops, to maintain the status quo, then you know for sure that when you remove them, it's going to go back. At some point over this 20 years, however Taliban troops were being held back, that responsibility should have been transferred, or a more sustainable environment should have been created. And if that wasn't ever possible to do, then we should have never been over there. It sucks. It sucks to see, to know that innocent people are caught in the middle of this, that with politicians that they don't know and will never meet, and who are quite frankly showing a not that much care for their lives. It's tragic, man. So I'm with that. I feel for the people of Afghanistan, G.
We have to feel for them. They are going through a social crisis, and this is the trippy thing about it, right? Where under Obama's administration, you had one of the, at the time, the largest increase in military and drone strikes into that area, killing many civilians, right? Which in turn almost pushed forward the advancement, the let's say the recruitment of people into the Taliban, because what they're seeing is this destruction that's happening around them. So even in the withdrawing of the troops, what the Biden administration and the Obama administration has said that their focus in going into drone strikes is part of the process of training local military in order for the local military to then be prepared to fight for themselves, so that when they do leave, local military can step in. But things such as the corruption within the local military has made that quite difficult. The military didn't fight back for a number of reasons, is something that happened as well. But it's again, man, lifting up love for Black and brown people, like my brother says, all the time. And that's one of those things where we need to acknowledge that situation, lift up love for the people in those situations, man, and let them know that this is that the world cares, at the very least.
Yep.
At the very least.
And we feel like it's important, to bring up these conversations precisely because we're not experts in them. And if we're sitting here trying to figure out what to care about and how to care and what we can do, we know that other people are sitting at home trying to sort all this stuff out. So that's just what we're trying to do. And if you happen to have some more information that you can hit us to on this topic or any other, please feel free to hit us up. We want to be providing the most accurate facts we could possibly be providing. We want to take into account all different perspectives. So yeah, man, this is two dudes using the history that we know and the information that we have access to make sense of what's going on around us. And at the end of the day, with this one, I think it's just it's sad. It's a bad situation, and all we can do right now is continue to educate ourselves, continue to remain informed, so that the politicians we elect are not the type that are going to get us embroiled in these conflicts that are bad for everybody. So think about that.
Yeah. That's the big part, is educating ourselves but then what do you do, for instance, when Obama comes in and he says that, by the end of his term, the military is going to have left Afghanistan? We champion that, we support that. Fast forward to, not only is the opposite true, where more people are being drones, where there's an increase in military presence and drone striking in that area. So that's the big fault in US politics right now, right? Whereas that there's no trust in the words that the government says. They say one thing, get into power, do something completely different. So what we can do at the very least is educate ourselves, like you say, on the issue. Also, let people know that these things are happening, and if anybody else wants to, maybe if there's something that strikes up some sort of activist energy in somebody, then we would have done our job by sharing the information.